This short film will show you how we created gesso panels in the style of Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh and made copies as closely as possible to some of her works. As she left no hints about her techniques, we had to devise our own methods, researching the ancient ways. Gesso is made from 3 ingredients: plaster of Paris, whiting, and rabbit skin glue. But first the plaster of Paris, which has to be made inert. It is weighed, soaked in a bucket of water, stirred continuously for the first half hour, and then every 5 to 10 minutes for the next hour. This is called slaking, and is necessary to rid the plaster of Paris of its natural setting properties. It is then covered and left for a month, stirring each day, to make a very fine gesso. After slaking, it is strained and squeezed through a jelly bag. At this point it can be used to make gesso, but to have a very useful ready supply, which lasts indefinitely, we dry it. Small handfuls are squeezed into meringue shapes and left until completely dry, which will take several weeks. They become like chalk, and in this form can be stored indefinitely. To make them ready for use again, it is necessary to smash them into powder form. We achieve this by simply placing the meringues in a cloth and smashing with a hammer. The second ingredient is whiting, which is bought in powdered form and is used in powdered form. Its purpose is to add bulk and whiteness to the mix. The last ingredient is rabbit skin glue, which when bought looks like demerara sugar. It has to be weighed and then soaked in water overnight, which makes it like jelly. The glue is carefully warmed but should never reach boiling point, as this would weaken it. The plaster of Paris and the whiting are added to the warm glue and well stirred. While still warm, it is strained and squeezed through muslin. This ensures that the gesso is smooth and without any lumps. It is now ready to use. Once cool, it can be kept for up to a month in the fridge, where it will set like putty. To make it ready for use again, it is put into the top half of a double boiler with hot water below, or it can be put into a bowl and stood in hot water. It will melt, becoming liquid again, like thick cream. The substrate that we use is a modern material called aerolam. It is very lightweight and rigid and will not warp. Traditionally, very well seasoned wood was used, and Margaret MacDonald used very heavily strapped canvas. To prepare the aerolam, the edges are filled with gesso, and the surface to be worked on painted with rabbit skin glue to give good adhesion. For this particular Margaret MacDonald panel, the red rose and the white rose, hessian is cut to fit, as this forms the background texture. Gesso is painted onto the surface of the panel to act as a glue for the hessian. The hessian is laid on. And painted again with more gesso, leaving plenty of texture showing through. This will dry hard and white overnight. The edges are tidied up by sticking the hessian down with more gesso. As in this case, we are copying Margaret MacDonald's Red Rose and White Rose. A tracing is made onto acetate from a print of her panel. The acetate is then placed on an overhead projector and projected onto the prepared panel and drawn on in pencil. Then the work of building up the raised drawing begins. One of the first things being the placing of the mother of pearl and abalone shell. The shapes are traced from the full-scale drawing, then cut and shaped using a grinding wheel. The pieces of shell are then stuck in place using a cake icing gun filled with gesso. Margaret MacDonald used an icing bag, but a gun is much easier to handle, especially when it comes to the raised lines. Gradually the drawing is built up, the roses are done in stages, allowing each layer of gesso to dry before applying another layer. Different areas of the panel have to be worked on so as not to smudge any newly done work. Each application takes several hours before it is dry enough to work over. As the faces are very smooth with no texture, this area is painted with thin gesso, and when completely dry, the detail is drawn on. The jewels are stuck on, mostly semi-precious such as rose quartz and lapis lazuli, but some glass beads also, but all resembling as closely as possible Margaret MacDonald's original. The drawing is built up gradually, and when it is completely finished and completely dry, the colour is added. First, an overall beige ochre tone is used as a background, using the traditional egg tempera water-based paint, which itself forms a very hard surface. The signature is piped on. Colour and tone are added, and the delicate painting of the faces. When all the painting is complete, a wax medium is made of beeswax and genuine turpentine. This is painted all over the panel. The panel is warmed in front of a real fire to burn the wax into the gesso. 2 or 3 layers of wax are burnt in. This hardens over time and forms a very durable covering. Finally, the whole panel is burnished with an agate burnishing stone. This gives a nice shine and helps bring out the colours.